Hey there and welcome back to another My Hero Academia video, and today we're going to be talking about the latest episode to drop, episode 4, Quirk Explosion, which follows up from the big battle between All For One and Bakugou last episode. Of course I say battle, but it really was an uneven and one-sided beatdown where Bakugou ascended to a whole new level, blew up All For One multiple times, and stopped him from reaching his goal of merging with Shigaraki. He hit him so hard that he started having flashbacks to the second user who he seems to believe ruined his life, which is kind of where we left things off. Okay, so from here on out, whilst I have read the manga, I quite literally only remember the ending, so we're well and truly flying blind now. I can't 100% promise no spoilers, but based on how I'm feeling and how much I remember, it seems unlikely. This season has been so good so far, with so much top tier action and a whole lot of emotion across all of the scenes and storylines. My hype has reached a fever pitch by this point, so there's nothing else for it but to jump into it. We start off the episode with a flashback to the origin of All For One. Obviously, he was twins with Yoichi, the first user of One For All, and it seems that right from the very beginning, he was destined to become what he was. I suppose that his quirk allowed him to somewhat dominate his brother in the womb, creating a significant size disparity between them, whilst at the same time it seems that their mother was homeless and alcoholic. I mean, she was drinking heavily whilst pregnant, so that cannot have been good for the babies. She wasn't a very friendly person, as when a kind lady tries to help her, she yells at her and throws a bottle at her. At the same time, we can also see that she had a quirk. I'm really curious about that. So it seems that quirks were around for a lot longer than I think is commonly stated in the show. Perhaps that glowing baby is just a famous first example, especially since he was born with an obvious quirk as opposed to growing into one. Perhaps this is the reason she's so aggressive and homeless. At some point after this encounter, the woman gave birth and I suppose died, but little Yoichi and All For One are somehow able to survive. I don't really know how this would be possible. The episode goes out of its way to show how they have to live on their own all their lives. She gave birth and died under a bridge. Strong quirk or not, he's still just a baby with a very simple brain at that time. On top of that, how would this tiny, malnourished Yoichi survive? I mean, it would only take a matter of hours for a newborn baby to die alone, right? Because that's what they are. They're newborn babies. I suppose we'll have to chalk this one up to rule of cool. We go to the intro theme, and when we return, it's to the origin of quirks again, but this time with a bit of added context. All For One was born as part of this first generation, or rather, the first acknowledged generation of metahumans. After all, we know that their mother was also a metahuman, and this suggests that powers had been slowly developing in the population for a very long time across the entire planet. Of course, as humans do, when these powered individuals began to appear, everybody became afraid, and things very quickly began to collapse into chaos and violence, and society seemingly resembled Japan post-prison breakout for the last 2 or so seasons. This is the environment that seemingly helped to shape All For One into the person he would become. An evil child who uses violence to get his way, and who seemingly enjoys taking lives. I do wonder how much of this is based on how he grew up, or whether he was always destined to be this evil. Either way, by the time he's a small boy, he's fully willing and capable of committing mass murder, so there's gotta have been something wrong with him, right? Hell, he even has the dead eyes. I will admit, I was not expecting it to be quite so gruesome when he kills these people. Huge blood spatters and gore, and I actually think it works really well in getting across just how deranged it all is. After all, while this show can obviously be violent, I do think this took it to an extreme, and juxtaposed with it being performed by a little kid, it leaves you feeling very unsettled, which is precisely what it's supposed to get you to feel. Over the last 2 episodes, the story has well and truly begun to peel back the layers of All For One's character. Gone is the stoic genius who has plans for everything, and revealed is the unstable, emotional child with too much power to be contained. It's so crazy how all of his aura has just evaporated, and he's been exposed in this way, but I like it. It makes a lot of sense and makes it feel more authentic. It can be fun when a villain's cool, calm and collected right until the very end, but it's also extremely satisfying to see them crash out and absolutely lose their shit. Anyway, this dude is extra horrific today. The part where it cuts over to him and Yoichi as babies with All For One gnawing on his mother before he opens those freaky ass eyes. Yuck, no thank you. Kill that thing with fire.
Ugh, it's hideous.
We see that his violence would continue and probably get worse as he got older. We don't really get to see whether he's just hunting people for no reason or whether he feels he's protecting himself from potential threats, but I suppose we're positioned to view him as a massive psycho, and so we probably don't need to be giving him the benefit of the doubt. He once again obliterates these poor bastards again and again until his brother steps in and stops him, but at the same time, earns a big kick for his trouble. Here, we get the narration that whilst he had nothing to offer him, and that's ultimately all For One cares about, obtaining and taking what he needs, that he never wanted to part with his brother because he views him as belonging to him. Pretty much the closest feeling to love that this guy can feel, I suppose. He knows that he's drawn to his brother and doesn't understand why, because in his mind, strength and dominance and taking what you want is all that matters. Yet he still wants him around and even spends time with him reading comics, whilst Yoichi wants to stay with him because he loves him and he can't give up on him. This is actually rather sad. They have such a toxic relationship, and clearly there is a bond there. It's just they never really had a chance, and then there's also the fact that whilst he seems to care somewhat about Yoichi, he doesn't give a shit about anybody else. This is clearly demonstrated when he goes out and murders the glowing baby, who's now attempting teenager trying to bring about peaceful relations between the quirkless and the metahumans. And why does he do this? Well, from what I can see, it's largely narcissism. He's older than the glowing baby, and yet he's not as well known. Meanwhile, that baby's famous as the first ever metahuman, even though it's not true. So he kills him and steals his quirk, and along the way, he develops his dream. For the world to live in fear of him. A world that exists just for him, just like Yoichi does. So by this point, I think it's pretty clear that he is pretty much pure evil. A person who has become completely and utterly wrong in every single respect. However, then once again, we get another glimpse of something more than that. Of something a little bit deeper, unless I'm reading too much into it. We have that scene where All For One forces Yoichi to receive a quirk. There's no reason for him to do this. Keeping Yoichi meek and weak is a better long-term play if he wants to keep him around forever. On top of that, he talks about how Yoichi's resisting. To me, all of this kind of suggests he wants to earn his brother's approval in a way that he doesn't quite understand himself. He wants his brother to follow him and to understand him and to be part of it all, but since he's such a piece of shit, he can't comprehend how. So his big plan is to give him a quirk because then he'll understand me. He was such a weakling before, but now he can know the power and feel of being a metahuman. Thus, he gives him the quirk, whether Yoichi wants it or not. It's at this point that he names his brother as well, as I guess they lived without names for all this time. How did they learn to speak or read or do anything? Were they raised by somebody else for a time? It's all very confusing. I think this is why when Kudo comes along and offers Yoichi an escape, All For One gets so angry. From his perspective, all he's done has been look out for his brother. He killed all those people, and he's the reason they survived in this harsh world. Even when he was on top of that world and becoming the feared Demon King, he kept his brother safe. So for him to run away, and not only that, but to run away with All For One's enemies? Well, I guess that would be the worst sort of betrayal for him, wouldn't it? An utter rejection of his ethos and way of thinking from the only person who's been there the entire time. That's why he kills him so brutally. Not out of any sort of strategic thinking or the cold, detached nature we'd seen before in flashbacks, but out of pure rage. So we have that confirmation that All For One did kill his own brother, and clearly he regrets it based on his determination to get the quirk and thus his brother back. However, we also know that he's not the type of person to take any sort of accountability. I reckon that in his eyes he had no choice, and since the world is made for him, it's that damn Kudo's fault. Kudo forced him to kill his brother by taking him away. If he can't have him, nobody can, and all that jazz. What I did find interesting is the revelation that Yoichi hardly even knew the second user. I figured he would have been a key figure in the resistance against All For One for some time before his death, but based on this sequence, I'd guess not. I was especially surprised to see that the power transferred to Kudo by complete accident. All For One killed Yoichi and some of the blood spatter on Kudo's face went into his mouth and gave him the new quirk, which then started collecting power. I guess that at this point, All For One also realizes that this has happened, as we've seen that he can steal quirks as he's killing somebody, like we saw when he killed Stain a couple of episodes ago. Man, it already feels so long ago that we had the All Might versus All For One last stand and Stain's death. I mean, it's only been a handful of episodes, and yet so much has been crammed into it. This is when All For One went on his huge quest, much of which seems to have revolved around simply trying to get his brother back. That's all he desired by this point. He killed Kudo only to find the quirk had been passed on. He hunted down Bruce only to find the exact same thing had happened. He was never able to find the fourth user of the quirk, as his danger sense allowed him to avoid being found for his entire natural life until the strain of the quirk killed him. He passed it off to number 5 before his death, who also ended up being killed by All For One, as did 6 and of course Nana, until we come to All Might, who is not defeated and instead punches his face in and permanently ruins his face despite all of his quirks. I really love the poetry of him looking down on his brother as a weakling before giving him a quirk that even a scrawny loser could use, only for it to be that quirk, fully powered up, that cripples him for life and forces him to try to get a new body, which in turn will lead to his ultimate downfall and death. On top of that, I really like that in the end, it was scrawny All Might that set him on the road to his final defeat by luring him to that battle to begin with the Hercules suit. It's just really poetic justice. I love that for him. We then finally come back to the present, and it's to see All For One ranting at Bakugou about how it's all his fault and calling him Kudo. He then reveals just how much he hates this guy. He killed his entire family and bloodline, plus anybody who was associated with him, just to ensure his line could never continue, that his essence would cease. I'm really loving how unhinged he's revealed to be, how the death of his brother seemingly absolutely broken his mind. Yes, that whole Demon King thing matters to him, no doubt, but at the same time, I think it's small potatoes compared to this, to getting his brother back. Part of me does wonder whether he's feeling guilt for what he did, but is unable to really understand or comprehend that feeling, and thus take any accountability, and so he blames and lashes out and makes excuses. It's some very compelling writing. He then wonders whether Bakugou could be of that bloodline that somehow escaped, but he discounts it. Bakugou simply looks like him and he has the same unyielding will. I liked this. No secret lineage, just two badasses with the same vibe, giving Murder Grandpa some extreme PTSD. It's so funny that All For One is so lost in his rage that now he's ranting about how Kudo's somehow foiling him from across time and space, as if he's somehow reincarnated into this kid, just to be in the position to ruin his life at the end. It can't be the culmination of a bunch of bad decisions by All For One. Oh no, it's that damn Kudo's fault. Here we start to get down to the wire, and the episode becomes more and more unpredictable. All For One realizes that he's running out of time and he can't afford to delay anymore. He knows that Bakugou's strong enough to fend him off long enough for it to ruin him in a straight fight, and so he has to go for the Hail Mary and get to Tomura so he can fight him, take control, and then get One For All back. Then things get really gross. This felt like some horrific Studio Ghibli type stuff, like when No Face is getting huge eating all those people in the bathhouse, or when he goes full bird in Howl's Moving Castle. He becomes this huge mass of flesh. It's such a horrific visage with all those faces, tentacles, and spikes. Absolutely disgusting. I really loved this part. The fake out was so good. You have the vestiges sense that he's coming, implying that he'll join the Deku fight soon. You have him power up beyond anything we've ever seen him do before to try to bum rush Bakugou and get to Shigaraki in one fell swoop. All Might screaming for Bakugou to dodge the attack. The huge purple energy field looks like something out of a nightmare. He's a true final boss. Bakugou's already had a big moment in the last episode, and so now there's a chance they move on from that storyline a little bit. You expect that All For One needs to get to Shigaraki to satisfy that narrative. The music's building, and it's all so intense. The nightmare ball is rushing at him, and then, kaboom! The reveal that there's some of Bakugou's sweat in his mouth that went off from All For One's use of quirks and has left him exposed for a big finishing move. I really love Bakugou's line of one quirk being all you need. Once again, we have the poetic justice of All For One spending over 100 years snatching up quirks to gain strength, only to be humbled and smacked down by somebody with a strong quirk who worked hard to perfect it. Bakugou goes at him again and again. The animation's incredible, the music's incredible, the sound, and then of course the voice acting. It all just makes it come to life perfectly. Bakugou gets his own United States of Smash moment, and it's just top tier. Hell yes. This next part though, the aftermath, it took me by surprise. All For One's cooked, he's a baby now, and I'll admit, I was not expecting that, although I will say that it did get me curious as to what would happen next. Would Bakugou actually kill an evil baby? Absurdly, All For One still thinks he has a chance, even like this. And they almost got me with it. When Bakugou's there with the baby swaying on his feet, I thought, oh shit, he's going to collapse and the baby's going to escape, or maybe try to steal his quirk. A great fake out followed by another great fake out when baby All For One shoots a spike at him, and you see that silhouette, only for it to be revealed that the baby version of the quirk is weak enough to catch in your teeth. I will say that that bit felt overly plot armored for my taste, but it is what it is. There's an excellent final line from Bakugou telling him it's time to go Betty bye before All For One straight up fades out of existence and dies. Okay, so I forgot this happened. What the hell? I guess Shigaraki really is the final boss with no shenanigans then. No All For One Shigaraki battle or confrontation? I find that very shocking to tell you the truth, but I do enjoy that it's kept me on my toes. The episode then ends with Bakugou collapsing, but with a fist in the sky, All Might style, before the preview tells us it's finally time. Deku versus Shigaraki, hell yes. This season's going nuts, it's so damn good. The action, the story, the character beats, the acting, it's all top tier, all contributing to a perfect ending so far. I'm really keen to see what happens next, but for now, these have all been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? Did you like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.